All right, so this is another bit that's not funny from Even the Dogs. Just to tell you a bit about it, I've got a 2-year-old son. He's called Lewis. He couldn't be here tonight. He got a book for Christmas called Where the Beans on My Toast Come From. And it's all about the beans growing in the field and going to the factory and the tins and the lorries and the warehouse and everything. And it's a nice book. And this is a bit like that. This is where the filthy smack in your arm comes from. Or the cheeky bit of brown in your spliff. It depends on your social background, I guess. So anyway, here we go. They lay him away behind a shining steel door in a room as cold as stone. And we see Ant. We see him now. We look and we see him now, waiting for help, bleeding into the silenced ground, lying in a field beside a road with the plants flattened beneath him as if he'd fallen from the sky. None of the pain he would have expected. Not yet. None of the screaming and panic and flailing around for something to be done. Only this whispering numbness, this stunned state in which it takes him a moment to understand where he is, to understand that some homemade bomb has thrown their Land Rover into the air, has blown another hole in the road, has killed more of his mates and done who knows what to him, lifted him from the surface of the earth and hurled him down into this field of waist-high stalks. The flowerheads looking down at him where he lies, waiting for someone to come, for some sensation to come seeping back into his body, the tips of his fingers, the ends of his toes, the blue sky, the poppies, the nodding poppy heads, the smell of smoke and burning and hot baked earth, the sounds coming back with a rush like he was being lifted from water, gunfire and shouts, and heavy bootsteps across the dry soil, and faces over him, helmeted faces, and bodies dangling with equipment, and then hands upon him, searching him, cutting away his clothes, touching his face, hands which come away from his body covered in blood, gloved hands, voices telling him he's going to be okay, voices telling him they're going to get him out of there, voices asking where the helicopter is, someone saying they were giving him a shot of morphine to keep him going until the helicopter arrived, and everything then okay. The fading away of the gunfire and of everything else, the many hands holding him tight and holding him warm and holding him safe above the good, dark earth. We see the poppy heads nodding and bowing in the breeze. We see the farmers coming to inspect their crops, walking slowly through the planted lines. We see the farmers returning in the mid-afternoon to score shallow wounds in each pod and let the milk-white sap seep out into the warming sun and harden and cool into blisters of blackened gum as he lies there, watching, waiting. We see the gum wrapped in leaves and laid out to dry and sold for good money to men who come rattling into the valley in old Russian saloons with loose floor panels. The sound of the helicopters in the distance. The cars grinding over the mountain passes and turning off the road by an old hill trail. The men slinging the black opium lumps into bags across their shoulders and walking to a pair of old iron shacks beneath an overhanging rock, where boys stripped to the waist are tending fires and oil drums and squatting over fat sackcloth bundles which ooze dark stains into the earth. We see the banked fires beneath the oil drums burning all through the night. Boys hoisting bags of fertilizer into the drums, stirring and straining the mixture through rice sacks and into cooking pots placed over other, smaller fires. More chemicals, more straining and pressing and stirring as dawn lights up the horizon and an oily dark gunge is spread out to dry in the rising sun. Strange light falling through the fields, golden light. Faces set against the sky and a sound of a helicopter somewhere and a voice saying, "Hang in there, pal, you'll be all right." Boys' voices chattering on in some language like Afghanistani or whatever it is. Boiling up a kettle of tea and chewing on handfuls of bread, pressing the coffee-coloured powder into brick-shaped blocks, the size of those pocket dictionaries the officers use when they're out in the villages winning hearts and minds, or maybe the size of those fat satellite phones they use for calling down airstrikes. The poppy heads swaying suddenly in a strong breeze, pressing themselves flat to the ground as if ducking for cover, and the helicopter suddenly dropping out of the sky like a what? Like a black mother goose, What were they even doing in bloody hell manned? And all the warm hands lifting him through the air, over the field, into the belly of the mother, and the mother lifting high over the landscape, over the fields and the mountains and the roads and trails which wind, almost invisibly, through the valleys and passes, over the pair of shacks where the bare-chested boys are bundling up dozens of powder bricks and loading them onto dust-coloured mules who wait patiently in the midday heat before setting off in long, ambling trains through the hills, and the mules keep walking steadily for days. And a man ducks out through a low doorway, pulling a scarf down from his mouth and welcoming the boys, offering them tea, shaking their hands like men and already moving towards the mules to untether their loads. Behind him, inside the shacks, other men are pounding the bricks back into dust and mixing the dust with vinegar, heating it over low fires before adding water and charcoal and washing soda, passing it through filters and steam baths until finally a bright white powder begins to form in the bottom of a broad flat pan and is carefully lifted out onto sheets of paper to dry, while somewhere overhead Ant still lies in the belly of the helicopter as it clatters over the landscape, angry and low, its shadow rising and falling as he looks up at the faces around him and feels the warm embrace of the morphine flooding through his broken body.